Danger can be lurking right in your nightstand. New research finds that some sleeping aid gummy supplements may contain a dangerous amount of melatonin. That's a hormone that regulates sleep. Western Mass News reporter Olivia Hickey hears from local experts about how you could be impacted.
When taking any vitamin or supplement, it's known that you should follow the directions on the label. But some people could have been ingesting more melatonin than they thought when trying to get a good night's sleep. Research from the Journal of the American Medical Association, or JAMA, found that 88% of tested sleeping aid gummies were inaccurately labeled. In fact, of the 25 unnamed brands looked at, researchers found 22 of them contain different amounts of melatonin than listed in their labels. And some supplements containing from 74% to a whopping 347% more of the hormone than what its label lists. Aaron Whitman, an associate professor in the pharmacy program at Western New England University, says monitoring supplements is something that has increased recently, with new supplements flooding shelves regularly.
The FDA specifically is charged with looking at safety and efficacy of over-the-counter and prescription medications. And while they do have some hand and looking at things like manufacturing practices for dietary supplements, they do not actually review dietary supplements because, again, even melatonin is not necessarily a drug, it's a natural substance. And so they're considered food additives and not actual prescriptions.
Our bodies naturally produce the hormone melatonin so our brains can regulate our sleep. But sleep medicine doctor Jay Flightman at Cooley Dickinson Hospital tells Western Mass News too much of the hormone isn't good for our bodies.
The major side effect is daytime fatigue and somnolence, excessive sleepiness on the next day. And that's really sort of the issue. You have people who are tired the next day, fatigued the next day, sluggish the next day.
What should you do to get to sleep? Whitman says you can always ask a doctor or pharmacist for more information before taking a supplement.
As a pharmacist, I always recommend people look for that seal for the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which means that there is a quality testing lab that has reviewed that product and confirmed that it is, in fact, what it says that it is.
And Dr. Flightman emphasizes melatonin is not a sleeping pill. And if you're having issues, see a doctor.
There's a whole host of diagnoses which present with sleep disruption. Sometimes people come in self-medicating and very often it doesn't work. And so the issue then becomes figuring out why the sleep problem is occurring and going from there.
Researchers also discovered that some of the products also contain cannabidiol, commonly known as CBD, which is found in cannabis. But check the label. According to the FDA, labeling CBD as a dietary supplement is illegal. Reporting for Western Mass News, I'm Olivia Hickey.